She had been waiting at the station for 3 long days, her hope slowly thinning like the morning mist that clung to the railway tracks. Yet something inside her refused to let her leave, refused to let her give up on the letter she held tightly in her hand. The letter that promised a new beginning, if only the man who sent it would step off that train and call her name. Clara Hartwell had lived enough heartbreaks to know better, but she had also lived enough loneliness to believe that sometimes, just sometimes, miracles arrive on iron wheels. And so she sat on the long wooden bench with her travel bag at her feet, staring at every train that came rolling in, her breath catching every time she heard the conductor shout, "All aboard," only to fall slowly back into disappointment whenever the crowd thinned and the man she waited for never appeared. Until the third day at sundown, when the steam from the last train billowed through the station like a ghost and a soft voice tugged her out of her daze. Clara blinked and turned, finding a little girl, no older than 7, standing before her, boots too big for her small feet, dust in her braids, and determination in her wide brown eyes as she pointed at Clara with a seriousness far beyond her age and said, "Ma'am, will you marry my daddy instead?" Words so startling, so impossibly direct, that Clara could only stare, her mind stumbling as she tried to place this child among the faces she had seen in town. But the girl didn't wait for an answer before grabbing Clara's hand with unexpected familiarity and pulling her toward the edge of the platform where a tall cowboy stood, hat low, coat long, shoulders broad enough to make him look carved out of the land itself. The man looked up with eyes that spoke of exhaustion and years of carrying more burdens than a single life should allow. And when he saw Clara, true confusion flickered in his gaze, matched only by the girl's certainty that she had done the right thing. "Leela," he murmured with a sigh, "you can't go asking strangers to marry your daddy." But the little girl crossed her arms stubbornly and said, "But she looks like she's been waiting for someone who ain't coming. And you look like you've been alone forever. So I decided it's a good match." And for the first time in 3 days, Clara laughed an honest, startled laugh that loosened the knot in her chest. The cowboy removed his hat, revealing windswept hair and a kind smile that seemed to apologize for the world's troubles all at once, and introduced himself as Eli Morgan, a rancher passing through to find a new teacher for the small frontier town he and his daughter lived in. Because Leela had barely spoken a word since her mother died 2 years prior until now, apparently, when she decided that matchmaking was a far more pressing matter than her education. Clara listened, her heart softening as she began to piece together the girl's boldness and the man's loneliness. And when Eli finally asked why she looked so worn, Clara hesitated before admitting the truth. She had come to meet a man who had promised marriage through letters, a man she had never actually seen in person, a man who had not returned her last correspondence, and the realization that she may have been abandoned stung her pride, but also freed her from the weight of false hope she had been carrying. Eli let out a slow breath, sympathy settling into his features, and Clara felt something shift in the air between them, not love, not instantly, but understanding, and maybe the faintest whisper of possibility. Because here was a man who didn't speak in grand promises, yet everything about him seemed steady, real, and carved from honesty. Still, she shook her head gently and knelt before Leela, telling her that marriage was not a thing little girls should worry over, and certainly not something decided at train stations. But Leela only stamped her foot and insisted that her mama always told her to follow her heart, and right now her heart said that Clara belonged with them. Eli flushed with embarrassment, apologizing, but Clara found herself smiling in spite of everything, touched by the strange purity of the moment. They ended up sitting together on the bench as the sun dipped behind the station roof, talking about loss and beginnings, about the ranch that needed hands and the schoolhouse that needed a teacher, about Clara's skill with books and Eli's quiet resilience. And as the evening cooled, Clara realized she was no longer waiting for someone who didn't care. She was choosing, for the first time in years, the possibility of something new. When Eli offered her a ride back to town if she had nowhere else to go, she hesitated, then said yes, not as a bride, not as a promise, but simply as a woman who was ready to move forward. Leela cheered, grabbed Clara's hand as if it already belonged to her, and the three of them walked toward the waiting horse and wagon, the night settling around them like a soft blanket. And Clara felt it then, not in a dramatic flourish, but in the steady warmth of Eli walking beside her. Perhaps love doesn't always arrive on a train with grand speeches. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a little girl with oversized boots and a question so bold it changes the course of 3 lives forever. And as they rode away under the starlit sky, Clara glanced back at the station one last time, no longer waiting, no longer lost, simply grateful that fate had a strange sense of timing, and knowing deep down that this unexpected beginning might become the greatest chapter of her life. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story and want more emotional, gripping Western tales just like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because your support helps bring powerful stories to life every single day. **